I am here with Bill Land, and we're going to talk gardening. Bill, what's your philosophy of gardening?
My philosophy is that you don't even think about the money you're spending. You're just enjoying the environment and the fact you've got fresh organic food. You got food if you really need it, like throughout the year, and food to give away. And you always get a smile when you give them a whole basket of tomatoes. And so my idea is it's exercise, it's out in the outdoors, it's experimental. And the magic of God is all around us too, with the beautiful flowers and the way the cycles go. Our garden really takes up most of the backyard. My wonderful wife Doris has been doing a lot of the work on the front end and paying for different things that we've been adding. And I do a roundabout, every a couple of days and make sure everything is checked over and see how things are doing. I've been working a lot more recently. I think it's an energy thing for good old Rickety Bill here. Now, there's many things that we're doing that are really exciting and innovative. That is part of the reason to do organic gardening in the first place. One thing that we often don't think about is that we need the soil opened up and fertilized by worms. Now, they just don't drop out of the sky unless a robin lets one go. So we go to the bait shop and liberate the worms and give them freedom. And I do that every year, and we put a whole tub of red worms and small worms in each bed. There's many other things we do. I'm just going to kind of list them in no particular order. Colloidal minerals are added when we plant, and along with again worm castings. Beneficial insects are added, particularly ladybugs. We got a whole bunch of ladybugs last year, and they came in the mail, and they were crawling all around. We had to let them go at night so they would stay on the property instead of take off yonder, several houses away. And the ladybugs are a little bit like the dinosaur of the garden, but in miniature form. They eat up almost anything, and they're much of a predator, and they're really a wonderful addition to our garden in terms of beneficial insects. We have a very unique thing that Doris kind of invented, and that's using our fish pond water. We'll see the fish pond later in detail when we do a walk around. We have a certain kind of pump that creates a lot of the sludge into a basket. She takes that sludge out and puts it around the plants. She adds a lot of deep green slurry water to the plants. So we're constantly watering sort of permaculture style out of the fish pond. So the fish and the gardening is integrated. Permaculture itself is integrated. And when you talk about permaculture, and I've taught this many times, I've taught organic gardening a lot. In fact, the early master gardening, I used to do that as a teacher. But it's really wonderful to take a look at how things influence each other. Our advanced organics, it's really kind of what I call some of our innovation. We don't use any pesticides at all, except some of the ones that are touted by organic farmers. Rotenone is something we don't use, but it's available, and neem is something that we really trust in a great deal. Neem is just a spray, and probably don't use enough of it, but spray it early and keep it sprayed throughout the season. And there's about half a dozen of the garden pests that you don't have to worry about anymore. The shade gardening is another thing that we do. We take a look at how the sun moves throughout the day in this backyard and make sure that those plants that are in shade too much are not the hardy growing plants and can take brighter sunlight and need brighter sunlight. I think some of our growth standards are really due to paying attention to how much shade we have in certain places. The rainwater catchment, and we'll see this as we go around too, We have 7 rainwater barrels, 55-gallon barrels, each connected to each other. Comes right off the roof. It's filtered. It goes from barrel to barrel to barrel. Each is filled throughout the season, and we could use that as a backup water supply. But right now, a lot of the watering comes out of the fish pond, which is so rich, that fish pond slurry of algae. The trellises and lattice work that we have around the garden, again, is part of verticality. We have a lot of wire in the garden, actually. We made wire hoops up in the air to make sure that our pet groundhog and his offspring don't get into the garden. And they seem to particularly like sweet potato leaves. And that's a bed we have to protect with chicken wire gardening over the hoops. Also, every bed has got that put in before the soil goes down. So something burrowing from below will not be able to get through the chicken wire. So that's just another innovation that we have. We have wind spinners in the garden, and that sometimes will keep away some of the cabbage moths and just some of the vermin that might come up, particularly at night. On a windy night, you might be able to keep them away. We have some lights that go on automatically at night that are very bright. That might get a possum to leave the area, or a groundhog, or we've had everything you can think of, from skunks to foxes back here, raccoons, and they can do a lot of damage to the garden. But this is something that you have to kind of plan for and expect. And one of the values of organic gardening is feeding the animals that are part of God's creation, for goodness sakes. The fish pond sometimes gets a little bit algae oriented, and Doris buys barley straw at one of the farm stores. It floats around as a kind of a big wad of barley that's all tied together. Takes that algae right out of there and cleans the water. And about a month after it's been in there, we take it all apart and use it as mulch. So there it's got not only the fish slurry, but it's also got the texture of barley grass. So that's the kind of mulch that we're using in small amounts. We tie up all the tomatoes. We didn't do quite as good a job this year. This year was strange with tomatoes, and we'll see this as we go around. We have about 45 to 55 tomatoes that came on early, and for some reason they just didn't have the energy this year that they normally would have. And I'm a little concerned about it, and we're going to work on fertilizing better. And something we did find that really helps with tomatoes is citric acid. Very small spoonful, like a little plastic picnic spoon, in a gallon of water, and that's plenty. Tremendous dilution. Putting that on about every 3 weeks will pep up any acid-loving plant, like tomatoes and peppers, and even sweet potatoes and squash are a little bit neutral to acid, and that really helps a great deal. Now, the bugs in the garden are not that numerous. I don't see any very large bugs. Maybe that we have lots of bird feeders. We have over a half a dozen. Doris fills a bird feeder every Sunday, and we have a great big party here with birds that come in from all over the area. And the houses, which are also abundant, raise a batch of new baby birds every year. And we really enjoy the integration, which is another permaculture idea of integrating different parts of the garden with each other. So they cycle, they work together. Permaculture is really energy. The greater the energy in a permaculture garden could be as much as 20, 30-fold compared to row cropping. Simply the amount of life in the garden, the natural energies of worms and beneficial insects, songbirds, bees, everything else goes together to increase energy. And the energy is so much greater in a garden like ours than you'd find in big row crop soybean and cornfields. As I said earlier, the hoops have something we are using in the winter now. We have a 4-season garden, and this is something I'll point out. Now, as we're in the 3rd season now, 3rd season really starts in July when we plant a lot of squash for a fall harvest. We have kale, and we have spinach, peas, green beans, lots of green beans. All are planted for the September, October, maybe if it's covered, November harvest. We'll replant again to put some of the beds under hoops with plastic, and when it gets real cold, we'll put a piece of muslin directly on, or linen cloth, real soft cloth, directly on the plants so that they don't freeze at 0-degree temperature. You don't need that otherwise if your hoops are not too high in the air. We lost a crop one time because our hoops are about 5 foot. They need to be about 2.5, 3 foot high. So that's really important, almost like half a hula hoop is what we're talking about. Organic gardening is really wonderful. And there's so many wonderful things we can do to enjoy the complexity of the garden, to be innovative and creative. It's very educational. And it gives us a lot of kind of leisure pleasure. It's relaxing to do the gardening of this type. We have some other things that I want to mention, such as we don't mulch very much, but recently I've done a lot of cotton, sterilized cotton as a mulch. This was originally rabbit bedding that was sterilized. I've tried that this year. This little things have to happen all the time, like trimming the raspberry plants back, hanging them up on wire so they're more vertical. And then you'll see wood chips between each of the beds. We had wooden boards down at one time, but they got a little slippery in the rain. And the wood chips is something we're using at this time. Soil texture is so important. The worms help a great deal, and vermiculture is very important with the worms. Vermiculite can be bought through Amazon, other places, and it is a soil opener, and it holds the water, and particularly good for carrots, as our carrot crop has been the best this year because of vermiculite. Now, as we've been talking about all this gardening, you have to realize that I went through a long list, and we try to kind of do a little checking each week that we are continuing those innovations and not holding back too much. But the garden planning, which you saw earlier with the garden plan that Doris came up with, is something that is a critical component of the garden. I think 2 areas are the hardest in the garden. One is the harvesting and using and actually cooking all the wonderful food that you have. And then another one is the proper planning and ordering of seeds and plants. We've done better really with plants than we have with seeds, but it depends really on the greenhouse we're going to, and we eventually find favorites that give us the kind of plant stock that is good. The big problem with planting seeds is, do you get enough breeze on those seeds as they're growing? You need a fan to stir the air so the stalks and stems get a lot stronger like they would in a greenhouse. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about the innovations and creativity within the garden. It's complex, and that makes it fun for me. I'm kind of that kind of guy. I like every little teaching thing that I can come up with, and every experiment, and a little bit like a scientist. I should have majored in gardening in college, or botany or something like that, but I majored in everything else. So Rickety Bill, he had to get that education, otherwise he wouldn't be able to understand nothing at this time of year. These 2 beds right here are about half size, And this one has carrots. It has all that texturizing from the vermiculite. And these carrots are really coming on pretty strong. I don't know if we can find a good one here or not, but we'll just have to see. That's a puny one compared to most of them, you know. But we have some that are about twice that size. And we can use the carrot tops in stir fry, or we can use them in salads, just the leafy part, and then wash off the carrots. We've been baking carrots recently a great deal. Behind me are the beets. We used a lot of leaves early on, and now we have probably a dozen large beets about the size of about bigger than a tennis ball, more like a softball in size. And we bake those too and then slice them. So those are the beets. Right over here we have broccoli and more broccoli and more broccoli. We've been harvesting this about 15, 20 times. It's pretty much played out, but we could still get little sprigs now and then. We probably will follow this with garlic, which is planted in the fall, and then we cover it with mulch. So the garlic is covered with mulch, and then in the springtime, the little green shoots will come up, and we leave them until they're about a foot tall, and they get really light beige brown, and that shows us when we can pick the garlic. And when we plant 50 garlic, that means we get over 200 cloves. So right now we've got a lot of cloves and other herbs hung up in our kitchen to dry. And the kitchen looks kind of old-timey with everything hung up there. Okay, this is the Garden of Eden eating. We have green beans that were planted in about the 1st of August, and they're going to give us a crop of green beans real late. There's a little white over here where it was mulch for squash that has been pulled, and we're going to be putting peas in there with a new trellis. Probably plant it this weekend. So we have a 3-season garden going, and we hope to have actually a 4-season garden later in the year. Okay, this garden patch here, it's gotten kind of taken over by what looks like weeds, but these are actually Greek or oregano. And if you want to smell it, Jeff, yeah. This is wonderful stuff. It's real strong.
Oh yeah.
And we'll save a lot of this and give this a lot of this away as a dried herb. Any place that is vacant used to have something else, and it's been replanted already in kale. They just haven't germinated yet. So again, the fall gardening concept comes up. Okay, this is some of the tomato crop, and this area right here produced well over 40 tomatoes early on. And then we've replanted some of these pots with large amounts of kale, and took out a couple of the tomato plants that weren't doing very well. This bed also got some of the citric acid, and it perked up a great deal when we actually started using that. So next year we're going to think more about researching the fertilizer for tomatoes that we've already done, and then add all of our talents to it. We often get around 200 to 300 tomatoes a year. So this year our harvest in that area has not been good. It's been made up by the beets and the carrots. So there's always something that does well. Okay, this is a chicken wire covering to keep Georgia, our pet groundhog, and his son or daughter out of these leaves. They absolutely love the leaves. They'll just take them right down to the little tiny thing left, and it just looks horrible. So this is being protected from above. It's already protected from underneath. And these are all sweet potatoes in here. Everything is sweet potatoes. We love sweet potatoes.
Now, you made these yourself?
Yeah. These are some of our raspberries. Jeff, you want raspberry? Just to take one off there, or a couple. We make sure that our photographer always gets fed a lot in the garden. It makes him happy. We have several kinds of raspberries, and the key to raspberries is to make sure that they're trimmed back so they get plenty of light.
There's a nice ripe one.
And we need to protect this next year from birds too. The birds seem to enjoy them a little bit earlier than we get to them. Okay, these trellises were used to support the peppers in this case, but they've been used in the past for peas and pole beans, things like that. So trellises in the garden for verticality really makes a difference. We wouldn't have to have them for peppers. We could tie them, but the trellis is a nice addition right there. And you can see we went from the large raised beds to some very large containers, that more of a container garden in this case. So we're using everything we can think of. This bed right here, 8x3, got a little bedpost here at the end, you know, it's like a garden bed, right? But all these plants right here are green beans. And we've already harvested out of that, and part of this bed is also fairly new, and this is a fall crop of green beans right here, and they were planted around July 1st. Our date today, and some of the garden is kind of played out, it's not at its strongest point. Our date today is the end of August, and I think we're doing right fine at the end of August, and looking forward to the the fall season gardening coming in. Let's see. This garden over through here shows all the vertical towers by the Garden Tower project. And the way we got these kind of brownish plastic resin garden towers is we did research for them. And they gave us a pair of towers, which actually we lowered the height of the towers about 2 feet. And now we have 3 towers. We just got another base. And these towers spin, they turn like that. They turn into the sun. And then you can also put worms down the center, or compost down the center. And some of these have been replanted. You can just see a few starts coming up, herb starts. This is mostly an herb. This is sage up here at the top. You can smell this if you want to.
Yeah, I can smell it from here.
You can smell the sage from here?
Yeah.
There you go. And it's a perennial. So perennials maybe would go in the top, and annuals would go in the cups. And right beside it is another small bunch of green beans. Every place that becomes vacant gets replanted for the fall. This is one of the whole concepts of year-round gardening. And all these don't turn quite as well, so Doris actually made a way that they can turn. They're much less expensive than the regular reddish brown garden towers.
And what do you have planted in this?
Okay, the top of this is basil. This is not what it seems. It's purslane, and purslane is a kind of a weed-like thing. We have some growing along the driveway, but it's edible. Becomes part of our survival garden as well. One of the nice things about gardening is that for about 8 or 9 months of the year, you've got enough food to get some nutrition for those 8 or 9 months. And if you save the food by drying or other really easy methods, you'll have food year-round. The quantity won't be that great unless you've got a bigger backyard, but it's really part of being prepared, which we all need to be for. So we're not going to compete with other people for scarce food supply. These other towers are, this is full of kale on the bottom here, and above this is Greek oregano. We saw that earlier, and it's got a really strong smell.
Oh yeah.
And we love it. You can see the green beans are coming up as and they're planted about the 1st of July. There's several pots here and some back along the fence that were purslane and also strawberries. We grew a lot of strawberries in these horse feeding troughs and different kinds of flower boxes. Tower over here, the top is just filled with chives. So if you like chives, we got plenty of them. And I guess that if you wanted to, you could get enough of these and make yourself kind of a Halloween wig that would be green, and that'd be another value of the garden.
Yeah.
This is another example of our 3-season garden, and what we have right in front of me here is yellow summer squash, and it was planted about July 8th. I usually try to plant it close to Independence Day, and you can see that the leaves are full. There's probably some squash on here. You like squash, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, there's a beauty.
Just in time for the photograph.
There you go.
You see, now some people are holding things like this up like fish from the pond.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a lot easier.
Hold it at arm's length. Yeah.
This is a lot easier than all the fishing tackle in your boat and everything else.
Yeah.
So that'll be good nutrition for you. Here you go. Now let me have that a second. Can you believe this? That there's probably about 6 on here, and this wasn't planted but a month and a half ago, and now it's the end of August, and it was planted in the first week or 2 of July. That's when you want to plant this late summer squash. Another thing about the summer squash is they tend to get a grub that comes into the stalk. And we're going to work on doing some research to see if we can avoid that. But the late squash doesn't seem to have that problem. So we could plant a lot more and get a lot more harvest if we planted in July. Okay, we're almost done with our garden tour. And this one plant right here is, we need more of this really, but this is rhubarb. And you don't eat the leaves, but you eat the stems near the ground and cut them in half and many pieces and add some maple syrup, and you've got a wonderful sweet taste to the rhubarb, and a lot of people mix strawberries with it. And then over here we've got some cherry tomatoes. We've been experimenting with different kinds. This type is a little yellow sweet cherry flavor, and please have some.
Yeah.
We put this kind of at the end of the tour,
Oh, those
so
are delicious.
the gardener that's doing that tour or that work, you know, can make sure that they get a little bit of food at the end. So if we haven't been picking as we went, we've got it here all at the end, so we can imagine the future and have an expectation that eventually this tour will end and we'll get cherry tomatoes. Important to our crop is taking the algae out of the pond and using fish water for a lot of our watering. Now what I did here, and this is handmade, it wasn't that expensive. I bought a plastic, a rubber type, actually more rubber, horse trough that was 250 gallons, circular, and we buried it about 18 inches in the ground, which wasn't too bad of a dig, and then started piling a circle of sandstone around the outside. Originally we had a waterfall from the center pump. That pump gave out, and right now we have the flush of the algae flush and the kind of intense slurry that Doris gets periodically. These fish are really fed every day, and they'll come to the surface, and it's kind of fun to watch them kind of fight for the food. Now, an important aspect of gardening is to understand the energies that are within the garden. And I don't know if we're going to see a big frog in that pond or not, but it has been the home because we've heard him, you know, his love calls. But the feng shui of this area is pretty splendid. I've taught feng shui for years. I have my own institute, and you want 5 elements being shown within the backyard. This is a water element right here, and it is really central to the whole project. Somebody asked one time, should I have a lot of aquariums? Sure. Should I have more than one pond? Why not? So you realize that water is a very healing energy, and one of the best healing energies of all, being close to the coast or along a lakeside, but you have it right here in your backyard. Now, to complement the water, which feng shui is all about balance and harmony, over here we have a fire pit. So fire and water don't mix, do they? But they do in feng shui because they add a completion to the energy field within the entire area. This fire pit is about 4 blocks high. We may put another level or 2 there to keep the dogs from ever sniffing the ashes there, and we don't want a burned nose on one of our poodles. Another thing, when you take a look at the playhouse, now that was built by Doris's father and brought in here and reassembled. You see the peaked roof, that represents the fire symbol. You see the up and down of the lattice, that's the wood symbol. And then the white is metal. And so eventually you get all 5 elements within the garden where you can see them all over the place. And this garden is pretty well balanced. Even Doris has hung some blue lights over here, some blue wine bottles as sort of a decoration. And so this is really our happy place. This is a place that, and everybody should have a happy place. When I was teaching geography, one of the assignments, the geography of Indiana, was to find your happy place in Indiana and give me pictures of it to the rest of the class and to talk about what it meant to you. And we had some very fascinating reports, oral reports by the different students. So geography is about the sense of place, and how could you not talk about the happy place if you're talking about the sense of place and location? Okay, this garden it's really a wonderful thing to have in your backyard. It gives you lots of pleasure, and when you come home and walk through that front door, you gotta realize you got a backyard that is also sweet. It's been feng shuied, so we got that covered. There's a lot of research that's gone into the garden, so that's fun for Bill. Rickety Bill is a researcher. He just loves information. And, it's always wanted to teach it, though. And people have to sometimes run fast enough to get away from all those lessons. It was wonderful as a professor, though, that the students actually had to stay in their seats and were given exams. Otherwise, they would have fled real quick. But being self-demeaning is not something I really want to do too often, because it might catch on with a lot of other people. Now, the garden itself is something that gives us security, exercise. The dogs play really well around all the different beds. They don't go in the beds. And it gives us a place to sit and appreciate the labors of garden love, which means that you're actually creating something. And I think that an artist, whether they be a sculptor or oil painting or whatever, when they start with a bare canvas, so does a gardener. He starts with a bare yard or a bare field or a bare back quarters, and he starts to fill in the pieces. And he can make it pretty artistic, or he can make it kind of jumbled. The idea is that it all fits together energy-wise. The way we're putting up food this year is mostly drying the herbs and hanging them up in the air. We're using a lot of food out of the garden directly, and when we bake carrots or bake beets, we bring them in, wash them off, and within the hour they're in the oven. So we've been using things directly out of the garden. Same thing with salads. And then the tomatoes, I was having tomatoes for my breakfast every morning. I'd go out and pick me the biggest tomato I could find. I found that there were 3 tomatoes that are almost a pound apiece. I couldn't believe how big they were. And when I took a look at that, I decided that I would take at least over half the tomato and put it with a jar of real hot salsa and mix the two together, and then freeze the two to make a more medium salsa. And that's a easy way, a real fast way to put food up, and your harvest is not easy. Your freezing and drying and canning is not easy. And we want to avoid a lot of labor by using things as they come right out of the garden. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tour of the garden and a little bit of the information with organic gardening. It's the way to go, really.